Climate change is now happening due to a 12,000-year cycle of cataclysms. We are not talking about global warming, supposedly caused by human activity. We are talking about the destruction of the planet from within and the death of all life on it. This is not a joke and not a script for a new disaster movie. It is already happening right before our eyes. Why do those who should have been the first to warn us of the impending doom keep silent? The scientists whom we entrusted with the responsibility of warning us of the disaster are divided. Instead of figuring out the real causes, they fight against each other. Some argue that climate change is caused by human activity, namely, the emission of CO2 into the atmosphere due to the burning of hydrocarbon fuels. In their opinion, this is the reason why the climate situation is catastrophically worsening. Other scientists believe that modern climate change has nothing to do with human activity. It is caused by normal variations in natural factors, just as it always happens in nature. And so there is nothing unusual about climate change on the planet right now. Yet, both groups of scientists are blind. They lack complete information and are very much mistaken. The climate is changing critically. Deaths and destruction are covering more and more territories every day. But it is not because of humanity. It is time for us to speak frankly.
Why do you intimidate people and make up some scary stories? The climate has always changed for natural reasons, and there's no catastrophe.
This morning, as firefighters try to
Just pull over, Jordy!
And there's no catastrophe.
Is a person who wakes you up by knocking at the door when your house is on fire, scaring or saving you? And if it's not just your house that is on fire, but the whole planet, should you be warned about that? What is happening on the planet right now is abnormal for the last 11,000 years. Let's face the facts. Over the entire millennium, the planet hasn't experienced such a drastic climate change as in the last 30 years of our lives. Overall ocean heating has increased by 450% in the last 30 years. Evidence of heating of deep ocean layers suggests that the ocean is warming from the bottom up. The ocean warming provokes an increase in the strength and number of hurricanes. The year 2020 has broken all records for the frequency of hurricanes and tropical cyclones on the planet over the entire period of observation. Due to increased humidity and rising temperatures, the intensity and number of tornadoes is increasing. Since the 1990s, the number of tornadoes in Europe has increased tenfold and continues to grow. Tornadoes and hurricanes can destroy entire residential districts, and they don't care if people are hiding there or not. Over the past 33 years, there has been an increase in the number of storms, wind speeds, and wave heights in the oceans are rising, and a significant acceleration of sea currents has been observed. According to NOAA, the number of floods in the US has increased by about 100% over the last 30 years. At the same time, they began to occur synchronously, hitting several countries at once. Since 1998, floods have affected more than 2 billion people worldwide. The rate of loss of the Greenland ice sheet over the past 30 years has increased 20 times and exceeds the maximum rate of the last 12,000 years. Numerous studies indicate that the cause of melting of glaciers is the increase in geothermal flow. That is, heat from the bowels under the Greenland ice sheet. Over the last 30 years, the rate of ice melting in Antarctica has increased by 65%. Moreover, this is happening only in the western part of Antarctica, where there is a huge magma chamber and 140 volcanoes, the heat of which melts the ice from the bottom up. Despite the fact that high mountain glaciers are melting, lakes and rivers around the globe become shallow, and water escapes into the depths through cracks. According to research by American scientists, water levels in the world's largest rivers have dropped significantly over the last 50 years. Around the world, thousands of water bodies disappear, but at the same time there are powerful downpours. For example, in China, despite frequent floods, more than 28,000 rivers have disappeared in the past 20 years, roughly half of all the country's rivers. The number of extreme fires is growing, and they do not cease even in winter. Nowadays, on average, 7 times as many large wildfires occur in the western United States every year as there were 40 years ago. Even the Arctic is already burning. With 2019 seeing the largest and most destructive fires in the Northern Hemisphere in 10,000 years. Fires occur in areas where the Earth's crust is fractured and where hydrogen, methane, and other combustible gases emerge from the subsurface. Because of that, fire cannot be put out. It incinerates cities, leaving scorched areas for years. More and more often, people lose their lives in fires or suffocate from the smoke.
Well, all of these things that you named, they are all caused by global warming, which is the result of the increase in greenhouse gases caused by the combustion of hydrocarbons. Humans are to blame.
Climate change due to CO2 emissions is negligible because the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere is negligible. The concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere is 0.04%, while anthropogenic CO2 is 0.0004%. How can 4 molecules per million that humans add to the atmosphere cause global climate change? The rise in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is a consequence, not a cause, of rising temperatures. Natural sources emit much more CO2 than humans. The main source of CO2 is the ocean, heated by intense magmatic processes on its bottom. The amount of CO2 emitted by the biosphere is also rapidly increasing. Trees have started to mutate, now emitting CO2 instead of absorbing it. In the last decade, the Amazon forest emitted almost 20% more carbon dioxide than they absorbed. And in Siberia, larches also began to emit CO2 into the atmosphere in the late 1980s. As a result, for the past 15 years, forests have been supplying it just as intensely as industry. Along with the forest, swamps began to emit CO2 as well. So the accumulation of CO2 is taking place at an increased rate in a natural way. The reaction of the biosphere and the ocean is a response to activation of the planet due to the 12,000-year cycle. Abnormality of the current events is confirmed by the period of the so-called Holocene optimum that occurred 6,000 to 9,000 years ago, when temperatures on the planet were 3 degrees higher than nowadays. However, there was no such a powerful emission of CO2, mutation of plants, and growth of cataclysms. Now the heating is happening from inside the planet.
I am not convinced. It's all man-made.
I agree that humans have no effect on climate change. But wait, what's that internal heating about? The sun is a major factor in climate change.
The present-day climate change is characterized not only by an increase in global temperatures, but also by an increase in seismic and volcanic activity, which is many times more serious. Since the 1990s, the energy of earthquakes has increased significantly. The number and magnitudes of earthquakes are increasing. The seismic activity in the Pacific Ring of Fire has increased 2.5 times between 1990 and 2021. The number of earthquakes at the ocean bottom, on the boundaries of plates along the mid-ocean ridges, is growing. All over the Earth, underwater and surface volcanoes are actively awakening. The growth of volcanic activity is recorded by the volume of erupted lava. 90% of active volcanoes are located in the Pacific Ring of Fire, and their activity is increasing every year.
All these earthquakes and eruptions are also caused by humans. As a result of global warming, the glaciers are melting. The load on the Earth's crust is decreasing. That's why the crust cracks and lava pours out.
This is a mistake. Firstly, there are no glaciers in the Pacific Ring of Fire, which could increase seismic and volcanic activity there. Secondly, despite their high speed of melting, glaciers have not yet melted completely. Moreover, on the contrary, they are melting right where magmatic activity is increasing, but not everywhere, as would happen due to melting from the surface. And finally, how can CO2 emissions cause deep focus earthquakes at a depth of 700 kilometers, which have disastrously increased in recent decades? According to seismologists, such earthquakes were considered to be impossible because at such depths, rocks are supposed to experience only plastic deformations. Since 2014, an increase in earthquakes at depths of more than 700 kilometers has been recorded. And in 2015, scientists detected an earthquake 751 kilometers beneath Japan, which was the deepest earthquake in the entire history of observations. Something anomalous has started happening in the Earth's mantle. Humans couldn't have affected the Earth's magnetic field in any way either. In 1995, a sharp acceleration of the North magnetic pole drift speed by 3.5 times was recorded, from 15 kilometers to 55 kilometers a year. The electromagnetic field is generated by the dynamo mechanism in the Earth's core. Therefore, it is obvious that changes in the magnetic field indicate changes in the core.
I agree about the magnetic field, but regarding the growth of seismic and volcanic activity, I'm doubtful. First of all, along with our progress, the number of seismic sensors has increased. Algorithm of data processing became more advanced. That's why we see their increase. As for volcanoes, it's just that the human population on the planet has increased, so there are more of those who observe volcanic eruptions.
That's an understandable point, but in this case, the increase in seismic activity is reflected objectively. According to experts, there was a significant leap in the number of installed seismic sensors on the planet approximately in the 1970s. Since then, their number hasn't changed significantly. While there is an increase in the number of powerful earthquakes, their magnitude is growing, and deep focus earthquakes began to occur. The increase in the number of sensors makes it possible to observe only an increase in the number of small earthquakes. Meanwhile, earthquakes with magnitudes over 4 are registered all over the planet at all seismic stations, regardless of where it happened in the world. Moreover, the increase in the number of strong earthquakes with magnitudes over 8 in the last 20 years has nothing to do with the way the data are processed. The same may be said about deep focus earthquakes. Since the first event of this kind was detected in the 1970s and up to the present day, there has been a significant increase in the depths and magnitudes of such earthquakes. Similarly, volcanoes have been observed from satellites since the late 1980s of the last century. In other words, since that time, all eruptions have been clearly visible from space. The world's population is growing in places where there are no volcanoes or very few of them. But where there are many volcanoes, the population doesn't grow or it even decreases. The number of volcanic eruptions is increasing statistically, and not because more eyes are looking at those eruptions.
If we accept your arguments, then what caused all this?
The climate has always been changing, but the planet's geodynamics has suddenly changed only in the last 30 years. These global changes are caused by processes inside the Earth. These facts are well known and recorded in satellite data. In 1998, scientists detected a sharp leap-like shift in the core by observing the center of Earth's mass via satellites. As a result of the leap, the core shifted sharply northward towards the Taimyr Peninsula. At the same time, scientists at the Medicina station in Italy recorded a gravity leap. Simultaneously with it, there happened a sharp change in the Earth's shape, measured by means of a laser ranging system from US satellites. The planet began to abnormally expand in the area of the equator, although earlier the trend was the opposite. Now, asymmetric crystallization of the core and unexplained phenomena in its very center are observed. Due to displacement of the core, the planet's rotation accelerates and its centrifugal force is growing. For this reason, magma sources in the mantle began to sharply rise to the surface, undermining and heating the lithosphere from the inside. Consequently, magma rising in the area of lower pressure expands in volume and boils up. Its pressure on the Earth's crust increases. The expansion of magma pushes apart the tectonic plates, increases volcanic and seismic activity across the planet, and causes the number of cracks in the crust to grow rapidly. Through these cracks, water from the surface escapes deep into the crust. The thin oceanic crust is ruptured by magma, causing the ocean to heat up at the bottom. Rising magma leads to an increase in geothermal flow from the Earth's bowels, beneath the glaciers of West Antarctica and central Greenland, which melts glaciers from the bottom up. Numerous facts of increasing geothermal anomalies, cases of water boiling in wells, permafrost melting at great depths, and methane explosions have been recorded. Further prediction of the trends of rapid geodynamic and climatic changes indicates that in the coming decades, due to the rise of magma, a massive melting of glaciers will begin along with a rise in sea level, increasing the number and the power of disastrous earthquakes, typhoons, and hurricane winds. Stratovolcanoes will erupt, which will lead to a long volcanic winter and disappearance of most life forms, including humans. Based on objective forecasts, we have only 5 or 10 years, at most.
There you go again, scaremongering us. Why do you say it will be catastrophe? And why in such a short time?
Changes similar to what we now see occurred before the peak of the crushing disaster just about 12,000 years ago. Those events are called the undeclared oscillation and the Younger Dryas glaciation that followed. 12,800 years ago, global temperatures rose as much as 15 degrees Celsius within just a few years. Most of the ice sheet suddenly melted, and the Earth emerged from a full ice age. At that time, there were extreme floods and other natural disasters, along with an intense sea level rise. The Gulf Stream stopped at that time, just as it is happening nowadays. Scientists from the University of Kansas have proven that about 12,800 years ago, there was a giant fire on Earth that covered a tenth of the entire planet's surface. Other researchers have also found that large fires raged in Siberia 12,000 years ago. Similarly, nowadays there are more and more large-scale fires that cannot be extinguished. Based on an analysis of satellite images, scientists have discovered that 10 to 13,000 years ago, the largest known dunes formed in the Sahara Desert and other regions, indicating the enormous strength of winds during the Younger Dryas. A short-term intensification of winds during that period has also been documented from Greenland ice cores data and research in Alaska. Nowadays, the same phenomena are happening on Earth as during the Younger Dryas. We see winds, hurricanes, typhoons, and tornadoes intensifying and destroying entire cities, razing them to the ground. Right at the cycle change 12,000 years ago, there was a very intensive seismic activity. This is indicated by radiocarbon data, as well as paleographic reconstructions of the Younger Dryas. During the same time period, more than 12,000 years ago, as well as now, there was a drastic weakening of the magnetic field and a pole shift, which was called the Gothenburg excursion. The reason for all these abrupt changes was an abnormal magmatic activity caused by changes in the core. This was expressed in large-scale volcanic eruptions that scientists recorded in the Younger Dryas by dust and traces of acid rains in glacial cores. Analysis of sediments found in Hall's Cave points to volcanic eruptions that caused a volcanic winter about 13,000 years ago, and glaciation across the globe. After the sudden warming in the Younger Dryas, an equally abrupt cooling occurred. This event caused a mass extinction of megafauna. Thousands of frozen mammoths and other mammals were found in the ice on the northern slopes of Siberia. There happened a drastic decline in the human population, including extinction of the Cro-Magnon. All of those catastrophic events occurred within just a few decades.
But why do you say that what happened 12,000 years ago should happen again now? Maybe it was an accidental event, and it was caused by other reasons.
The same catastrophic events occurred on the planet not only 12,000 years ago, but also earlier. Taking into account errors in dating, this cycle is very well traced in the geological data. Catastrophists among scientists wrote about it independently of each other in their books and works. Vladimir Bubnenkov, Vitaly Bushyev, Alexander Baturin, Igor Kopolov, Nikolai Petrov, Maynard White, Douglas Vogt, and many other scientists have come to understand the cyclicity of global cataclysms on Earth with a period of approximately 12,000 years. In geology, paleontology, and archaeology, there is numerous evidence of past disasters of this cycle. Each of these catastrophic events was characterized not only by abrupt changes in the climate situation, but also by complete geodynamic restructuring, weakening and excursion of the magnetic field, widespread disastrous volcanic eruptions, tectonic restructuring, atmospheric temperature variations by 10 to 15 degrees, and changes in the world's ocean levels by 20 to 50 meters, followed by large-scale glaciations. Since every cycle is accompanied by a change in the magnetic field and powerful volcanic eruptions, it clearly indicates that the cycle is associated with changes in the planet's core, just as it is happening now. We are entering the active phase of the cataclysmic cycle.
But what causes this cycle? What makes the core shift?
Researchers believe that this cyclicity is galactic in nature. That is, it is related to the rotation cycle of the galaxy. Every 12,000 years, radiation from the center of the universe affects the solar system and even influences the sun. In 1998, not only was the Earth's core recorded jumping, but also those of the moon, the sun, and other planets. In recent decades, scientists began to record drastic climate changes on all planets and satellites of the solar system. An increase in the number of giant storms and hurricanes, abnormal temperatures, an increase in volcanic and seismic activity. Now, an increased flux of cosmic radiation due to the low activity of the sun is detected on Earth. Scientists have found evidence that a similar bombardment by cosmic rays occurred 12,500 years ago. In addition, every 12,000 years, an unknown flow of violent cosmic energy from the center of the universe comes to our planet. This high-energy impact occurs at the micro level and has enormous potential to trigger a shift of the planet's core. Galactic radiation disrupts the life cycles of the biosphere. Trees begin to massively emit more carbon dioxide, whereas swamps emit compounds of deadly gases. This time, Earth may become another dead planet, just like Mars. The planet's immune system is now destroyed by the toxins that our technogenic civilization has excreted. The planet's diseased organism might not survive the enormous stresses which cyclicity creates every 12,000 years. Every 24,000 years, disasters are even more devastating, since the solar system gets closer to the radiation from the center of the universe. We are now getting into this point of the near interaction. The planet is living its last years, and so are we, if we remain idle.
Why are you telling such things? It can only spread panic. People would give up in despair, for there is nothing we can do.
Right. There is nothing we can do about it. You can't go against nature. What can we do if it's cosmic radiation? Do you have a specific solution?
We can find this solution because there is always a counteraction to any action. A high-energy flow is approaching our planet, and we can put up a defense if we understand what kind of force and in what capacity we should counteract it with. It is necessary to unite all honest, conscientious researchers from various fields of science, technical experts, engineers, practitioners, and theorists who are ready for new discoveries because the task is multidimensional and multi-level. It is necessary to set one common goal at the level of all countries, to provide scientists with funding, access to advanced technologies, and truthful statistics of climatic and geophysical services. Even with our current technology, it is quite possible to counteract cosmic radiation. If the goal is one and society prioritizes preservation of civilization and every human life, then humanity will be able to find a solution on how to manage this high-energy flow. But we have very little time to find the solution. It is possible to unite the scientific potential of conscientious researchers only with the absolute support of the entire society in all countries. There can be no place for competition, private interest, and lust for profit. Openness of information for research may be available only in the creative society format, where there is no reason for wars and conflicts. In order to establish such a format of society, unification of all 8 billion people is indispensable.
Creative society? What is creative society? Sounds like some utopian idea.
Is this communism?
Creative society is a format of society where, not on paper, but in practice, the highest values are every person's life, freedom, safety, and well-being. It's a society where there is no power of one person over another, where people themselves make decisions on key issues without shifting responsibility to a few individuals. All conditions are created for the development of one's personal potential for the benefit of all people, and the whole society takes care of every person. It's a world without wars, poverty, violence, or power. Such a society is beneficial to everyone. Unlike communism, the creative format cannot be built by force or via a revolution. Creative society is an opportunity to peacefully bring our civilization to a new stage of evolution within the shortest time possible. All legal, economic, and social mechanisms are available for that. But this requires true unification of people. This doesn't mean uniting our wallets or refrigerators, but uniting based on the values of humaneness, kindness, mutual help, and respect. We are 99% of the planet's population. We want to live as human beings. People all over the world are already uniting and acting to build the creative society.
What can we do right now?
What can I do? Where do I start?
You can join the Creative Society platform that already exists. Invite your friends, scientists, and all thinking people. You can tell the truth about climate change and the way out honestly and without smoothing over the rough spots. Through mass media, you can spread information about what is really going on, not to sow panic or fear, but to share the solution. People do not want to hear the truth because they are simply scared until they know there is a way out. Now, everything depends on each person, on you, my friend. Right now, you can tell all your friends, acquaintances, and relatives about what you learned and understood at the forum. Global crisis. We are people. We want to live. We should act now, while we still have time, so that we don't painfully regret later for not finding the right words and not being able to warn about the trouble. Creative Society is not a political or commercial organization. It's an association of ordinary people from all over the world who, despite any circumstance, act to save all of humanity. These are true heroes, just like you. Join us. We can do anything together with you.
Look here. Now, look here. We can do this. It's realistic.
Yes, of course.
I'm calling the director of the Institute of Volcanology.
Good idea.
If even these people have understood, why don't you understand, my friend? If you were asking, what can I do? The answer is simple. Right now, it's very important to share information that you've just seen with all people. We all know each other through 6 handshakes. Sharing this video with your friends will take 2 minutes, but it will save people's lives, including yours. A creative society will bring benefit
to everyone. And only by uniting all together, we can build a peaceful and secure world. Decide to die in a consumer format or live in a creative society. The choice is yours.